it means the point of no return has been passed. I'm submitting to you today that when John picked up his pen to write the book we now call Revelation, he was an old man. He lived in Ephesus. He was now in his late 80s, or more probably in his early 90s. John was the last surviving apostle that Jesus had personally handpicked and was alive on earth. He was also Jesus' cousin. Jesus' mother and John's mothers were sisters. That's why Mary was so concerned at the marriage of Cana. This was not just some person. This was her niece. All of the unfolding things that happened at that drama was because of Mary's concern for her sister's daughter. Over 60 years before this moment, when John is about to write the book of Revelation, he and his brother James had been standing by the side of the boat that their father owned. Jesus had walked by and said, "Come, follow me. I will make you fishers of men." John left the boat and began a journey that had now encompassed 6 decades. The years had been incredible. For 3 years, he had followed Jesus, the Messiah, and taught and ministered to thousands. John had been selected by Jesus to hold a special place along with his brother James and Simon Peter. These 3 men were what we call the inner circle. This inner circle was used by Jesus on a number of occasions during his earthly ministry. He took these 3 men into confidential moments the other disciples did not share. John had been there for the entire journey of Jesus' earthly ministry. John was at the foot of the cross when Jesus died. John had been through all the years of the New Testament church. John was right there standing by Simon Peter on the first day of the church in Acts chapter 2. He was there when the lame man was healed in chapter 3. John was with Peter when they were cast into prison. He had been there when his brother was martyred by Pilate. John accompanied Peter to the house of Cornelius in Acts chapter 10. John had lived through the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, when it is reported by historians that over 1 million Jews were crucified outside the walls of Jerusalem. John had been at the Jerusalem Council when the decision was made for the Gentiles to be able to come into the church. I'm submitting to you that this old apostle, in the latter years of his earthly sojourn, his head and his mind were filled with memories of triumphs and tragedies. Now he was the last original surviving apostle. He was feeble and he was aged. Troubled news was being brought to him from teachers in the church that false doctrine was making its inroad. There was a growing epidemic in the church. They were telling John that Gnosticism had gained a foothold and taught that Jesus never really had a human body. This false doctrine said that the flesh is intrinsically evil. Therefore, Jesus could never have inhabited a sinful abode. John said, "Bring me writing material," and with shaking hand and possibly dictating to a helper, he wrote 1 John, that which we have seen, that which we have heard, that which we have handled, the word of life. You may not believe him, but I was there. I walked with him. I slept beside him. He lived and he existed. John wrote 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John. Now no one on earth was better qualified to rise up and refute these doctrines that were threatening the church. And now the Spirit was moving him to write the final concluding book of Holy Scripture, the book of the future, the book of Revelation. The old apostle picked up his writing material and began to write. And the text scripture that we read today was penned by the hand or dictated by the voice of this old apostle. I'm submitting to you today that the world that John lived in when he wrote the book of Revelation was a Roman world. It was a world that he saw every day. As he walked throughout the course of his daily intercourse with society, he observed many things. And in the Roman world that he lived, there were many crowns given for many acts of merit and bravery. He lived in a world that was no longer Jewish. Jerusalem was gone. It had been burned and destroyed over 20 years before. There was nothing left of his beloved homeland. Living now in Ephesus as an old man, it is completely a Roman world. Jews have been expelled and scattered in the diaspora. John writes to the world that he lives in. He uses Roman imagery and symbolism to pen the book we call Revelation. When John says what I read to you today, on his head many crowns, John was describing the crowns he saw every day in the marketplace, on the Roman roads, and in the tribunal courtyards. They surrounded him in the world in a daily way. The Roman use of crowns is unique in world history. It is backwards and inverted to our way of thinking. Can I tell you today that the lowest awarded crowns given were crowns made out of gold? When we read in the Bible that we take our crowns of gold and we cast them at his feet in the book of Revelation chapter 4, because we value gold, we see that as some significant act of giving up something that is very valuable. I'm sorry to pop your bubble today, but I came to let you know the truth. And the truth is that in the Roman world, the golden crown was the lowest level crown that a human being could achieve. It was entry level crown. It was not the highest crown at all. They are the basic crown given for the most common awards. They are, in the eyes of the Romans, the furthest thing from the gods. They are the farthest thing from anything of value, because you have to go deep in the earth to find them. They saw the highest accolades and the highest awards as those things that were nearer to heaven. So I'm submitting to you today that when John penned the statement, on his head many crowns, his viewpoint was not what we would take from a Western value system. They are Roman values, and it is inverted to our modern thinking. Let me tell you for just a few moments today about these crowns and why they would be on the head of Jesus. One of these crowns was called the Corona Valerius. It was a gold crown. I'm going to call it the crown of Palisades. As he walked the daily walk throughout the city of Ephesus and possibly other places he had journeyed in the empire, occasionally he would see a Roman soldier, and the Roman soldier would have on this golden crown, and it was a crown of Palisades. This particular crown was given to a Roman soldier that had protected someone from attack. When the enemy was so close that he had you in his sights and he could literally put his hand on you, the man that came between them, the man that formed a barrier between you and destruction, became the man that was awarded the crown of the Palisade. The Palisade wearing on his head stands for the fact that I stood between someone and destruction. I believe when John saw these crowns in the everyday life that he lived, he saw things in the spirit world that went far beyond beyond the Roman Empire. I have to believe that John saw a soldier one day, maybe at the marketplace, maybe selecting a piece of fruit. Who knows the business that he was doing? But all of a sudden he saw that crown, and he didn't think about that Roman soldier, but he thought about his cousin. He thought about his God. He thought about his Lord. And he said, let me tell you something. There would be nobody in heaven at all if it wasn't for the fact that Christ wears the crown of a palisade, that he stands between me and my failures. If it wasn't for him, I was down and I never could have got up.